Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hello learners, today we will be discussing about origin of life or the beginning of life on earth. In this module, we will be focusing upon the biochemical origin of life or the modern hypothesis of origin of life, as this is the most accepted view as of now. I am Dr. Sudhir Verma, working at Deen Dayal Upadhyay College, University of Delhi. In this lecture, we will learn about how universe, then the solar system, including our earth, originated. Then we will move on to how life originated on earth. What were the conditions that were so favorable that it provided the suitable environment for the origin of life on earth. We will discuss about the chemogeny. Chemogeny is basically the chemical origin of life, where we will discuss about how simple molecules originated on life on earth and how these simple molecules got converted to the complex ones, leading to the formation of protocells on earth, and finally how this led to the process of biogeny, that is the biological origin of life, means how the unicellular prokaryotes originated, which further led to the formation of multicellular eukaryotes. Before we proceed ahead, I would just like to have a recapitulation of what we discussed in our previous lectures. Remember, when we were discussing the theories of life, we discussed about the theories which have been given for the origin of life on earth. And the very first one, which focuses more on creationism, is the theory of spatial creation as given by Father Suarez, which says that the whole earth and the organisms which you see on earth have been created by God in 6 natural days. The next theory was theory of panspermia, which focuses on extraterrestrial origin of life, means the life originated somewhere else and then it got transported to earth. So extraterrestrial origin or the cosmozoic origin of life. We also discussed about theory of abiogenesis. Abiogenesis theory says that the life originated from non-living matter. However, this theory has been criticized and discarded, but it has some relevance when we discuss about the origin of life. Later, we moved on to theory of biogenesis, which says that life comes from the pre-existing life, and various experiments have been performed by a number of biologists to prove that there is always a biogenesis, never the abiogenesis. These are the theories which we discussed when we talked about origin of life. But in this module or in this lecture, we will be focusing more on biochemical origin of life. When we say biochemical origin of life, that means we are combining both these theories, that is theory of abiogenesis as well as the theory of biogenesis. The first part of biochemical origin of life leads with abiogenesis, wherein the living matter originates from non-living molecules, and then the biogenesis comes into play. So this biochemical theory of origin of life is basically a combination of chemical processes or the chemical origin and the biological origin. You must also remember the biochemical origin of life was first given by A. Operin and J.B.S. Haldane. According to them, the organic molecules could be formed from abiogenic materials in the presence of external energy source. Remember, we are talking about primitive life, primitive earth, where the sources of energy were primarily either the ultraviolet radiations, the volcanic energy, the cosmic rays, radiations from sun, etc. And the atmosphere was reducing in nature, which was more of hydrogen, ammonia and other gases, but it was not having the oxygen or oxidation processes were not there. Means, in nutshell, the biochemical origin of life says that if the reducing atmosphere is there and the source of energy is there, simple organic molecule can form from abiogenic material as well. Now, in this biochemical theory of origin of life, we will divide our lecture into sub-modules kind of thing, where we will first discuss about origin and evolution of universe. That means how universe came into existence, how it formed, how it evolved, etc. Then we will move to origin of solar system, including the planets and particularly our Earth. Then we will move to chemical origin of life. What were the conditions that were so favorable that it allowed life to originate on Earth? How simple molecules were formed? How these simple molecules gave rise to the complex macromolecules or the biomolecules which we call. This part comes under chemogeny. After which we will discuss the biological origin of life, which comes under biogeny, wherein we will discuss about how these molecules gave rise to the cells, the prokaryotes and further the eukaryotes, which are multicellular in nature. So let us discuss about the first part of this lecture on origin and evolution of universe. Our universe came into existence around 13.7 billion years ago. Around 13.6 billion years ago, the first star came into existence. The galaxies were formed at around 12.8 billion years ago. Our solar system, including the sun, is around 4.6 billion years old, whereas the Earth, where we live, is around 4.56 billion years old. The moon formed around 4.53 billion years ago, and the secondary atmosphere around Earth came into existence at around 4.2 to 3.8 billion years ago. Now this timeline is very important to see because it indicates how different celestial or these planetary bodies came into existence. If you have seen this kind of pictures on internet, here this is the Earth, this is the Sun, and from Mercury this is Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn and so on. So you can appreciate this is our solar system and there are so many galaxies, so many suns, so many planetary bodies around. But how all these formed, how these bodies came into existence? Cosmology, which is the study of universe. According to the cosmologist, the universe began around 13.7 billion years ago, as we just pointed out, in a sequence of events which we call as Big Bang. Now this Big Bang was first indicated by a Belgian priest called as Georges Lemaitre, who suggested that Big Bang theory or the Big Bang phenomena in 1922, where he theorized that universe began from a single primordial atom. Though he did not describe the theory as such, but it was just an indication that universe started from a single primordial atom. And it was 1920 when he proposed this theory. The term Big Bang was given by Sir Fred Hoyle, whom you can see here. He was a British astronomer and a mathematician. According to this theory, around 13.7 billion years ago, the universe, which we see today, was only a few millimeters across. Since then, it has expanded from this hot, dense state into the vast and much cooler cosmos which we currently live in. So, from this small, dense, hot, millimeter across kind of structure, now we have such a wide, much cooler universe around us. The Big Bang model has been supported by various observations, and first of its kind observation was given by Edwin Hubble, which is the expansion of the universe. Hubble in 1929 observed that galaxies are generally receding from us. Means if you stand here, you can observe that galaxies are receding from us. It provided the very first clue that the Big Bang theory might be the correct one, which also says that universe is expanding. So if something is expanding, if you are static, obviously you will feel that they are going away. Another support for the Big Bang model of origin of universe comes from the cosmic microwave background radiation, which we also call as CMB radiations. These CMB radiation is the remnant heat left over from the Big Bang. So, which you can also observe that these CMB radiations can be detected now. They are the remnant ones from the Big Bang, which exploded this dense matter into something which we call now as universe. The CMB radiations was first predicted by a person called as Ralph Alpher. Ralph Alpher was the student of George Gamow, and along with Robert Herman in 1948 he worked on Big Bang nucleosynthesis, and he predicted that these CMB radiations are there, but it was just a prediction. It was first observed inadvertently in 1965 by Arno Penzias and Robert Wilson at the Bell Telephone Laboratories in New Jersey. Now, once we know that the Big Bang might be the possible hypothesis or the possible model of bringing the universe into existence, what about the time period? What about the tempo of Big Bang? If you focus on the timelines, in the first 10 raised to the power minus 43 seconds of its existence, you can appreciate the scale of time here. It is just 10 raised to the power minus 43 seconds of its existence. The universe was very compact, less than a million billion billionth the size of single atom. On this one statement, you can appreciate two things: the scale of time and the size which we are talking about. It is million billion billionth the size of a single atom. At such an incomprehensibly dense energetic state, only four fundamental forces can be predicted to have forced into a single force: the gravity, electromagnetism, the strong and weak nuclear forces. But our current theories haven't yet figured out how a single unified force would have worked. Whatever data we are talking about and whatever data we have available so far to discuss about the origin of universe came from two satellites which were launched by National Aeronautics and Space Administration, or the NASA. The first of these satellites, which was launched in 1992, is Cosmic Background Explorer or CBE. More recent one in 2001, the Wilkinson Microwave Anisotropy Probe, which is also called as WMAP satellite, added our knowledge about the origin of universe. I would hereby also like to suggest you to go to this particular site from NASA, which gives an elaborate discussion or description about origin of life, the cosmology in general. It talks about the Big Bang theory, the concept, the test, beyond Big Bang theory, our universe, and many other resources which you can explore. Now let us move to the second part of our chapter, which is on origin of solar system and planets around Earth. So once the universe formed, how our solar system came into existence, how these planets formed, including the planet which we are residing now, the Earth. There is a hypothesis that planets are formed from huge cloud of dust and the gases, which is termed as solar nebula. The part of this nebular theory was proposed by Emanuel Swedenborg in 1734. There are two main theories of origin of planets in our solar system. The first theory is called as collision theory and the second one is called as condensation theories. Let's quickly have a brief idea about what these theories tell about origin of solar system and the planets. According to collision theory of origin of planets, as given by George Buffon in 1749, the star or the comet collided with sun, and this way they threw out debris that formed the planets. Or the other possibility can be they passed close enough to pull out through gravity some material out of it that later on became the planets. This is extremely rare to have happened so, but this is the theory which George Buffon put forward for the origin of sun and the planets. More realistic or more convincing theory as given by Immanuel Kant, which is also called as condensation theory or the nebular hypothesis of origin of planets. It was more elaborated by Pierre-Simon Laplace later on after Immanuel Kant. Now if you focus on this theory, it says that this was the supposed cellular nebula. It started contracting from all the directions, because of which what happened is the inner part of it got heated up. It was a very high temperature at the inner side of this solar nebula because of this contraction. And as this nebula shrinks, its motion causes it to get flattened out. Now, this nebula is a disk of matter with a concentration near the center. This center gave rise to something which we call as protosun. And the material which was there in this ring, this got solidified because of condensation and the lowering of the temperature. And this is something which gave rise to various planets across or through a number of or series of in-between bodies which we call as planetesimals or the planets. Planetesimals are basically the building blocks of the planets. So now you can see the step which nebular hypothesis or the condensation theory suggests about the origin of solar system, and it is totally opposite or totally different from what we saw in case of collision theory. And here is the solar system which we are aware of, which we see now. This is the sun, Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and many other planetary bodies which we are not discussing here because it is beyond the scope right now. Then the question comes, out of many planetary bodies which formed, why Earth is so special? Speciality with respect to origin of life and evolution of life. What allowed life to evolve and flourish over last 3.7 billion years ago? Means, what was the condition, what was the special condition on Earth that not just life originated, but this life has survived over 3.7 billion years ago on this planet? Now, some of the points which we can refer here are a moderate sized sun around which the Earth revolves. It provides us the radiant energy source since a long time. It is just rightly distanced orbit. It is neither very close to the sun nor very far, because of which what we get is optimum amount of heat, optimum amount of light, and perfectly suitable climate for the life to exist. Earth also has almost right composition of atomic elements. The presence of water, you must have seen, the presence of water is the indication for the origin of life. So whenever we talk about extraterrestrial life on other planets, say Mars or some others, we talk about signs of finding the water on them. Also, there is a giant magnetic field on Earth, which is because of the large iron core that it has. This magnetic field protects us from various cosmic and solar radiations. So these are some of the characteristics which provide us suitable environment which originated as well as helped to evolve the life on Earth. Now let's talk about the primitive Earth's atmosphere. The atmosphere which we see now is totally different from the atmosphere which primitive Earth had. In contrast to today's atmosphere, remember, there was no free oxygen. And if there is no oxygen, that means the atmosphere is of reducing type. Nowadays, the atmosphere which we have, it is not reducing one. Additionally, there was lots of hydrogen at that time, abundance of hydrogen. And thirdly, there was no ozone layer. As you might be aware of, this is the ozone layer which protects us from the solar radiation, cosmic rays, and so on. But if you consider from primitive Earth's point of view, these 3 points were favorable for evolution or origin of life. Because of no ozone layer, the energy could reach on Earth's surface, which was coming through solar radiations or the cosmic rays. Because of abundance of hydrogen, we got enough material to form the building blocks. We got enough material to form the simple molecules, which later on gave rise to the complex biomolecules and the life. Because of non-availability of oxygen or reducing environment, these synthesis process could take place, which is not possible in the oxidizing condition or oxidation processes. The sources of energy on primitive Earth were also different. The energy which was reaching on Earth, it was coming through ultraviolet radiations or the solar radiations. As we just discussed, there was no ozone layer to restrict them in the atmosphere. There were lots of electric discharge which were providing energy. The impacts from the meteorites and the ionizing radiation or cosmic rays which were reaching on Earth, they were additional sources of energy. Besides this, there were lots of volcanic eruptions as well, which provided lots of energy to Earth. Now, you must have a brief idea about how universe originated, how our solar system came into existence, and then what was so special about the primitive earth. Now we can move on to the next part, which is called as chemogeny, or the chemical origin of life. Now in this third part of our lecture, which is chemogeny, we will discuss about formation of simple organic compounds. Once you are aware of the suitable conditions were there on earth, how these simple organic molecules got formed. Then we will discuss how these simple organic compounds gave rise to complex organic compounds, or the macromolecules, or the biomolecules, such as proteins, nucleic acids, and so on. And then we will move on to discuss how the protocells, the preliminary cells, got formed. Now to discuss this, let us first discuss, we should be aware of what are these molecules which we are talking about, which can give rise to life, the molecules of life. Remember, for any form of life or living status, there are two fundamental classes of molecules that are required. And these are the amino acids, which give rise to proteins, because all our cellular machinery is dependent on these proteins to function. And where do these proteins come from? They come from our nucleic acids. So, nucleic acids in the form of deoxyribonucleic acids or DNA, or ribonucleic acid, the RNA, they come from nucleotides. So, amino acids are building blocks for proteins, nucleotides are building blocks for DNA and RNA, and both of them are required to form any sort of life. Now the question is, where do these molecules came from? On the primitive earth, how they originated, and what was the process to form these molecules? There are three possible sites for origin of early molecules. Remember, we are talking about primitive life, primitive earth. So how this originated? What were the sites on earth which gave rise to these molecules? There are three possibilities which have been suggested. Can be hydrothermal deep sea vents, the area or the region near volcanic eruptions, the surface of layered clays. As you might have seen, these three are all not so normal situations, not so normal places, because the situations were not normal at that time. So the organism which could survive those conditions, only those could lead for the origin of life. So these are the three sites which could have the possibility that life originated at either of these.